Can you believe a 20-year-old girl could be sold by her own father to pay his debts? Evelyn Cross never thought it would happen to her until she was forced to become the bride of the city's most powerful and dangerous man. But this man isn't the monster she imagined. Alessandro Vieri offers her a choice no one expected, and it will change everything. This is the story of a girl who was bought and sold, but ultimately became the queen of her own destiny. Stay until the end, hit like, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled. The call came on a Tuesday. Evelyn Cross had been in the middle of her organic chemistry lab when her phone vibrated against the black countertop. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. She ignored it. Professor Mitchell didn't tolerate interruptions, and she'd already lost points last week for checking a text during his lecture. But the buzzing continued, insistent and angry, until the girl next to her shot her an annoyed look. She glanced down. 12 missed calls. All from her father. Her stomach dropped. Richard Cross never called. Not for birthdays, not for holidays, barely even for emergencies. The last time she'd heard his voice was 8 months ago when she'd gone home for winter break, and he'd spent the entire week locked in his study, only emerging to criticize her choice of major or remind her that she was wasting his money on a useless degree. Something was wrong. She packed up her things with shaking hands, mumbled an excuse to the TA, and stepped into the hallway. The phone rang again before she could even unlock it. "Hello? Get home! Now!" Her father's voice was clipped, cold. No greeting, no explanation. "I'm in the middle of—" "I don't care what you're in the middle of. You have 24 hours to get back to the estate. Don't make me send someone to collect you." The line went dead. Evelyn stared at her phone, her reflection distorted in the black screen. Her heart hammered against her ribs. In 20 years, her father had never demanded anything from her. He'd simply expected compliance and punished its absence. This was different. This was urgency wrapped in threat. She should have ignored it, should have blocked his number, gone back to her lab, pretended the call never happened. But some sick, stubborn part of her needed to know what could possibly be important enough to drag her back to that house. She booked a flight for that evening. The Cross estate sat on 40 acres outside the city, a sprawling monument to old money and older secrets. Evelyn had grown up in its shadow, literally. Her bedroom window had faced the east wing, where her father conducted business with men who arrived in black cars and left before dawn. She'd learned early not to ask questions, not to wander the halls after dark, not to make herself seen or heard. The taxi dropped her at the gate just after 9 p.m. The house was lit up like a theater, every window blazing. Her chest tightened. Her father hated waste. He'd once made her eat dinner in the dark because she'd left a lamp on in her room. The front door opened before she could knock. "Miss Cross?" Marcus, her father's assistant, stood in the doorway. He was a thin man with sharp features and sharper eyes, the kind of person who noticed everything and forgot nothing. "Your father is waiting in the south parlor." "What's going on?" "He'll explain." Marcus stepped aside, gesturing her in. "Leave your bags. Someone will take them to your room." "My room?" She hadn't slept here in 2 years. "How long does he expect me to stay?" Marcus didn't answer. He simply turned and walked down the hall, his footsteps silent on the marble floor. Evelyn followed. The south parlor was her mother's room, or had been, before the cancer took her 6 years ago. Her father had left it untouched, a shrine to a woman he'd barely spoken to in life. Evelyn hated this room. It smelled like roses and regret. Richard Cross stood by the window, his back to the door. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with silver hair he kept meticulously groomed. He didn't turn when she entered. "Sit down, Evelyn." She remained standing. "What's this about?" "I said sit." She sat. Not because she wanted to, but because something in his tone made her knees weak. He turned then, and she saw his face. He looked older than she remembered, deep lines carved around his mouth, shadows under his eyes. But it was his expression that stopped her breath. Not anger, not irritation. Fear. "I need you to understand something," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "What I'm about to tell you is not a negotiation. It's not a discussion. It's a fact, and you will accept it. You're scaring me." "Good. You should be scared." He crossed to the bar, poured himself 2 fingers of scotch, drank it in one swallow. "I made some investments, bad ones. The kind that men like Vincent DeLuca don't forgive." Vincent DeLuca. Even Evelyn, sheltered as she'd been, knew that name. He ran half the city's underground. Gambling, drugs, protection. People who crossed him disappeared. How much do you owe him? 8 million. The number hit her like a fist. Dad, I don't have it. I've liquidated everything I can. The houses, the cars, the accounts. It's not enough. He wants payment in 30 days, or... He stopped, refilled his glass. Or he takes it in other ways. Evelyn's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs. So what are you going to do? Her father looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw something in his eyes that made her want to run. I've arranged an alternative payment. What kind of alternative? DeLuca has an associate, a business partner. Younger man, runs his own operations. Very successful, very powerful. He's looking to expand his legitimacy, invest in real estate, establish political connections. He needs a wife from a respectable family. The room tilted. No. Her name would provide him cover, access to circles he can't reach on his own. In return, he's agreed to absorb my debt to DeLuca. No. Evelyn stood, her chair scraping back. You can't be serious. I've already signed the contract. Then unsign it. It doesn't work that way. Her father's voice was flat, emotionless. The agreement is binding. The engagement will be announced this weekend at a garden party. The wedding is scheduled for 8 weeks from now. Evelyn couldn't breathe. The walls were closing in, the air too thick, too hot. You sold me. I saved both our lives. You sold me like I'm property. You are property. The words exploded out of him, sharp and brutal. You're a cross. That name is worth something. And right now it's worth exactly $8 million in our continued existence. So yes, Evelyn, I traded you, because the alternative was watching DeLuca's men put bullets in both our heads. She was crying now, hot, angry tears that she hated, that made her feel weak and small. Who is he? His name is Alessandro Vieri. The name meant nothing to her. I won't do it. You don't have a choice. I'll run. I'll disappear. You can't make me. He has resources you can't imagine. If you run, he'll find you. And when he does, the deal is void, and DeLuca comes for me. Is that what you want? To kill your own father? It was manipulation, cruel and calculated, and she hated him for it. But it worked. Because despite everything, despite the neglect, the coldness, the years of feeling invisible in her own home, he was still her father. I hate you, she whispered. You'll get over it. He set down his glass. The party is Saturday. Marcus will take you shopping tomorrow for something appropriate. Don't embarrass me. He walked past her, his shoulder brushing hers, and left her standing alone in her dead mother's room. The next 3 days passed in a blur of surreal horror. Marcus took her to boutiques where women in severe black suits pulled dresses from racks and discussed her body like she wasn't there. Too much shoulder. The waist needs taking in. Mr. Vieri prefers classic lines. She stood on pedestals and let strangers pin fabric to her skin and tried not to think about the fact that she was being dressed for her own execution. She tried to research Alessandro Vieri, but found almost nothing. No social media. No interviews. Just a few mentions in business journals about real estate acquisitions and development projects. There was one photo, blurry, taken from a distance at some charity gala. A tall man in a dark suit, his face turned away from the camera. A ghost. Her father didn't speak to her again. He was locked in his study most hours, on phone calls that ended when she walked past. The house filled with staff preparing for the party. Florists, caterers, event planners, who turned the gardens into something from a magazine spread. White roses everywhere. She wanted to burn them all. On Friday night, she tried one last time. Dad? She stood in his study doorway. Please, don't make me do this. He didn't look up from his desk. Go to bed, Evelyn. Tomorrow's a big day. I'm 20 years old. I want to finish school. I want to have a career. You want things that don't matter anymore. He set down his pen, finally meeting her eyes. You think I don't know what I'm doing to you? You think I sleep well at night? Then stop. I can't. For just a moment, something cracked in his expression. Grief, maybe, or guilt. If there was any other way, I'd take it, but there isn't. So you're going to put on that dress tomorrow and you're going to smile, and you're going to act like this is the happiest day of your life, because our lives depend on it." She left without another word. The garden party started at 2 p.m. Evelyn stood in front of her mirror, barely recognizing herself. The dress was beautiful, she could admit that much. Ivory silk that fell to her ankles, simple and elegant, with a neckline that showed just enough skin to be interesting without being scandalous. They'd done something to her hair, pulled it back in a way that made her look older, sophisticated. A stranger. She looked like a bride. Her stomach turned. "Miss Cross." Marcus appeared in her doorway. "It's time." The gardens were full of people, 200 guests, maybe more, all dressed in their finest, drinking champagne and pretending this was a normal celebration. She recognized some faces from her father's business circles, society women who'd ignored her at fundraisers, men who'd looked through her like she was invisible. They saw her now. Conversation stopped as she descended the terrace steps. She felt their eyes on her, assessing, judging, pricing. Her father appeared at her elbow, his hand firm on her arm. "Smile," he murmured. She smiled. He led her through the crowd, accepting congratulations, deflecting questions about the groom with practiced ease. "He'll be here shortly. Business matter. You know how it is?" Everyone laughed like he'd said something clever. Evelyn wanted to scream. They stopped near the rose arbor where a string quartet played something classical and boring. Her father checked his watch, then the gate, his jaw tight. "He's late," Evelyn said. "He'll be here." Maybe he changed his mind. Maybe he found someone else to buy. Her father's grip on her arm tightened, painful. "Watch your mouth." A ripple went through the crowd then, heads turning, conversations dropping to whispers. Evelyn followed their gazes to the gate. 3 black cars had pulled up to the entrance. No, not just cars. SUVs, expensive ones, with windows tinted so dark she couldn't see inside. The kind of vehicles that said money and power and don't ask questions. The rear door of the middle SUV opened. A man stepped out. He was tall, easily 6'2" or 6'3", with dark hair pushed back from his face and a build that said he didn't spend his days behind a desk. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her entire college tuition, fitted perfectly across his shoulders. Even from a distance, she could feel the weight of his presence, the way the air seemed to shift around him. Alessandro Vieri. He didn't hurry, didn't acknowledge the stares or the whispers. He simply walked through the gate like he owned it, like he owned everything, flanked by 2 men who were clearly security. Not the rent-a-cop kind. The kind who'd killed people. Her father's hand fell away from her arm. "Remember what I told you." Then he was walking forward, hand extended, wearing the smile he used for clients. "Mr. Vieri, we're honored." Alessandro shook his hand briefly, but his eyes had already moved past Richard Cross. To her. Evelyn's breath caught. He was younger than she'd expected. 30, maybe 32, with sharp features that stopped just short of beautiful, and eyes so dark they were almost black. But it was the way he looked at her that froze her in place. Not with lust or possession or any of the things she'd feared. With assessment, like she was a problem he was trying to solve. He crossed the distance between them in a few long strides, and suddenly he was right there, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive, and see the faint scar along his jawline. Evelyn Cross. His voice was deep, controlled, with the barest hint of an accent she couldn't place. "I've heard a great deal about you." She found her voice. "I wish I could say the same." Something flickered in his expression. Amusement, maybe. "Your father thought it best to keep the details private until today." "My father thought a lot of things." "Evelyn." Her father's voice held a warning, but Alessandro held up one hand, silencing him without even looking in his direction. "It's fine, Richard. She has every right to be angry." He turned back to Evelyn. "Walk with me." It wasn't a question. He offered his arm. She stared at it like it was a snake. "I don't bite," he said quietly. "Not in public, anyway." Despite everything, she almost laughed. Instead, she took his arm, feeling the solid muscle beneath the expensive fabric, and let him lead her away from her father, away from the crowd, toward the far end of the garden where the noise faded to a murmur. He didn't speak until they were alone, half hidden by a hedge of white roses. "I know what you think this is," he said, releasing her arm and turning to face her fully. "What your father told you, And I know you had no choice in any of it. And that doesn't bother you? The words came out harder than she'd intended. That I'm here because I was sold to you like furniture? It bothers me a great deal. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a slim silver case, extracted a cigarette. Your father is a desperate, foolish man who made bad decisions and worse enemies. Using you as collateral was cowardice. He lit the cigarette, exhaled smoke. But I'm not Vincent DeLuca. I don't collect debts in blood. Just in brides. In opportunities. He studied her through the smoke. Your father offered you up thinking I was like him. A man who'd see you as property. A token to be traded. He was wrong. Then why agree to this? Because I need what you represent. Not you specifically. What your name provides. Access, legitimacy, connections. Things money alone can't buy. He took another drag. And because if I'd refused, your father would have found someone else. Someone who might not have given you a choice at all. Evelyn's hands were shaking again. She pressed them together. So what? You're my savior now? I should be grateful? You should be realistic. He crushed out the cigarette beneath his shoe. I'm offering you a transaction. Not a love story, not a fairy tale. A business arrangement that benefits us both. How does this benefit me? I lose my freedom, my life. You get protection, resources, power, if you're smart enough to take it. He stepped closer, and she forced herself not to back away. Your father's debt is gone. DeLuca and his people will never touch you. You'll have access to money, lawyers, anything you need to secure your own future. And when this arrangement has served its purpose, you'll walk away with more than you came in with. When it serves its purpose? She stared at him. What does that mean? It means we stay married until I've established the legitimacy I need. 2 years, maybe 3. Then we quietly divorce. You get a settlement that sets you up for life. No strings. 2 years? 3. It sounded like forever and nothing at all. And in the meantime, you play the role of my wife in public. Private life is negotiable. His eyes held hers. I won't force you into my bed if that's what you're worried about. I'm not interested in unwilling partners. How generous. It's not generosity, it's self-interest. Rape is bad business and worse morals. He said it so matter-of-factly, like he was discussing a contract clause. But I will require your cooperation in public. Appearances matter in my world. Can you do that? Could she? Could she stand next to this man at parties and dinners and pretend to be something she wasn't? Could she smile and lie and play the happy bride while her real life waited somewhere in the distance? Do I have a choice? You always have a choice. He reached into his jacket again, pulled out a business card, held it out to her. My lawyer's number. Call him if you want to negotiate terms before the wedding. Anything you want written into the contract, separate residences, financial independence, control of your own accounts. He'll make it happen. She took the card with numb fingers. You're giving me a lawyer? I'm giving you leverage. Use it or don't. But understand this, Evelyn. He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping. I don't want a victim. I don't want some trembling, broken thing that I have to manage and manipulate. If you're going to do this, do it with your eyes open. Be smart. Be strategic. Take everything you can from this situation and use it to build something for yourself. Why? The question burst out of her. Why would you want that? Most men would want... I'm not most men. He straightened, adjusting his cuffs. And I have no use for a wife who's just decoration. If you're going to carry my name, carry it like it means something. Before she could respond, Marcus appeared around the hedge, looking flustered. Mr. Vieri, Mr. Cross is asking when you'd like to make the formal announcement. Alessandro glanced at Evelyn. Well, are we doing this? Every instinct screamed at her to run. But where would she go? Back to college, only to have her father's debts follow her? Into hiding, alone and terrified, always looking over her shoulder? Or forward, into this strange, dangerous bargain with a man who looked at her like she was capable of something more than just survival? She thought of her mother, who'd married her father for love and spent 20 years invisible in her own home. She thought of the women at the party, dripping in diamonds their husbands bought them, performing happiness like a script. At least Alessandro Vieri was honest about the transaction. One condition, she said. His eyebrow lifted. I'm listening. I finished my degree. I don't care what else happens, but I finished school. He considered this for a moment, then nodded. Done. I'll have a car take you to campus twice a week, security included. Anything else? Not yet. Smart girl. He offered his arm again. Shall we go perform for the crowd? She took it, feeling the weight of the decision settle in her bones. They walked back to the party together, and Evelyn felt every eye track their approach. Her father stood near the terrace, his face carefully blank, but she saw the tension in his shoulders. He'd been afraid she'd refuse, afraid she'd burn it all down and take him with her. Part of her wished she had. Alessandro led her to the center of the garden, where someone had set up a microphone. The crowd pressed in, eager and vulture-like. Richard Cross cleared his throat. Friends, family, honored guests, thank you all for coming today to celebrate a truly joyous occasion. It is my profound pleasure to announce the engagement of my daughter, Evelyn Cross, to Alessandro Vieri. Applause erupted, champagne flutes raised. Evelyn's face ached from smiling. Alessandro's hand settled on her lower back, warm through the thin silk. You're doing well, he murmured, too quiet for anyone else to hear. I'm dying inside. I know, keep smiling anyway. She did. Smiled through the toasts, through the well wishes from people she didn't know, through her father's speech about love and family that made her want to vomit. Smiled as Alessandro kissed her cheek for the cameras, a brief chaste press of lips that somehow felt more intimate than it should have. When it was finally over, when the last guest had left and the caterers were packing up, she found herself alone with her father in the emptied garden. You did well today, he said. She stared at him. That's all you have to say to me? What else is there? An apology, an explanation, something that makes this feel less like you fed me to wolves. You think I wanted this? His voice cracked slightly. You think I slept last night? You're my daughter, Evelyn, my only child. But you're alive, and you'll stay alive, and one day you might even thank me for it. I'll never thank you for this. Then hate me, but hate me from the safety that man's name provides. He turned to go, then paused. He's dangerous, Evelyn, more dangerous than you realize, but he's not cruel. If you're clever, you might survive him intact. Then he was gone, leaving her standing in the ruins of her life. Isessin. The wedding was exactly 8 weeks later. In that time, Evelyn did exactly what Alessandro had suggested. She used his lawyer like a weapon. She demanded her own bank account, fully funded, that her husband couldn't access. She demanded the right to maintain her friendships, her schooling, her identity separate from his. She demanded that any children, and she was very clear that she wasn't planning on having any soon, would have equal claim to both family names. The lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Victoria Chen, had smiled when Evelyn finished her list. Mr. Vieri said you were smart. He'll agree to all of this. He will? He's not interested in breaking you, Miss Cross. He's interested in seeing what you're capable of when you're not cornered. Victoria slid the contract across her desk. Sign here, here, and here. Welcome to the game, Evelyn signed. The wedding itself was a spectacle. 400 guests, a cathedral, flowers that cost more than most people's houses. Evelyn wore a dress that weighed 15 pounds and made her feel like she was drowning in lace. She walked down the aisle alone, her father conspicuously absent from the proceedings at her request. Alessandro stood at the altar in a midnight blue suit, his expression unreadable as she approached. The ceremony was short. The vows were traditional, meaningless words about love and honor that stuck in her throat. When the priest said, "You may kiss the bride," Alessandro leaned in and whispered, "Breathe." She did. His kiss was brief, professional, and somehow still managed to make her pulse jump. The reception was worse than the ceremony, hours of small talk with people who looked at her like they were trying to figure out what Alessandro saw in her, what she'd done to trap him. She heard the whispers, caught the speculation. She's so young. Her father's business, connections. She seems sweet. Probably won't last a year in his world. Alessandro appeared at her elbow during the third hour, his hand sliding around her waist. You look like you want to murder someone. Several someones. Specific targets or general carnage. I'll let you know when I decide. He laughed, an actual laugh, surprised and genuine. Come on, let's get out of here. we can't just leave our own wedding. Watch me." He led her through a side door away from the crowd into a hallway where two of his security team waited. One of them handed Alessandro a set of keys. "Where are we going?" Evelyn asked. "Anywhere but here." He glanced at her. "Unless you want to stay and dance with my business associates for another 3 hours? I'd rather die." Good answer. They left through the service entrance, and Evelyn half expected someone to chase them down, to drag them back to the party. But no one came. Alessandro helped her into a sleek black car, different from the SUVs, something low and fast, and then they were driving, leaving the venue and the people and the performance behind. She should have been terrified. She was in a car with a man she barely knew, a man who ran operations she didn't understand, heading toward a destination he hadn't named. Instead, she felt something close to relief. "Where are we going?" she asked again. "Home." He navigated through traffic with easy confidence. "My home. Our home now, I suppose." "What's it like?" "Quiet, private, secure." He glanced at her. "And before you ask, separate bedrooms. I meant what I said about not forcing anything. Thank you. Don't thank me for basic decency." They drove in silence for a while, the city lights blurring past. Evelyn pulled pins from her hair, letting it fall loose around her shoulders. The dress was impossible to manage in the car, layers of fabric pooling around her feet. "I hate this dress," she said. "It's hideous." She blinked. "You picked it." "I picked the designer. She picked the dress. Apparently I'm supposed to want my wife looking like a cupcake." He shot her a dry look. "Next time you need formal wear, choose it yourself. You have better taste than my staff." "There's going to be a next time? Charity galas, business dinners, political fundraisers. You're a Vieri now. There's always a next time." The reality of it settled over her again. This wasn't just a wedding. It was an entire life, structured and scheduled and completely foreign. They pulled up to a building in the financial district, sleek glass and steel, modern and imposing. Underground parking, private elevator, biometric security that made her feel like they were entering a vault. The penthouse took up the entire top floor. Evelyn stepped out of the elevator and stopped. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, lights spreading out like a galaxy. The space was open, minimalist, all clean lines and neutral colors. Nothing like her father's house with its heavy furniture and suffocating history. "Your room is this way." Alessandro led her down a hallway, opened a door. Private bath, walk-in closet, balcony access. The door locks from the inside if you want privacy. The room was bigger than her apartment at school. The bed alone looked like it could fit 4 people. "My room is on the opposite end of the floor," he continued. "Kitchen is stocked. There's a gym on 42, pool on 43. My office is on 40. Security monitors all entry points, but they won't bother you unless there's a threat." "Threat?" "I have enemies, Evelyn. Comes with the territory, but you're safe here. Safer than anywhere else in the city." She sat down on the bed, suddenly exhausted. The weight of the day, the week, the past 2 months crashed over her all at once. "Hey." Alessandro crouched in front of her, his eyes level with hers. "You did good today. I know it was hard. I know you didn't want any of this. But you showed up, and you played the part, and you didn't break. That takes strength." "I feel broken." "You're not." He stood, headed for the door. "Get some rest. Tomorrow, we'll talk about what comes next." "Alessandro?" He paused, looked back. "Why me?" "Really? You could have had anyone, any family. Why agree to this specific arrangement?" He was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. "Your father offered you up because he thought you were weak, disposable, a pretty face with no fight in her." His eyes held hers. "He was wrong. I saw that the moment I met you, and I wanted to see what you'd become if someone gave you room to grow instead of trying to cage you." Then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him. Evelyn sat alone in her new room, in her new life, wearing a wedding dress she hated for a marriage she hadn't chosen. She should have cried, should have broken down, should have let the fear and anger and grief pour out. Instead, she stood, unzipped the dress, let it pool on the floor like a discarded skin. She found pajamas in the dresser, someone had already unpacked her things, and crawled into bed. "Tomorrow," she thought. "Tomorrow I'll figure out how to survive this." Tonight, she just needed to breathe. She woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and forgot, for exactly 3 seconds, where she was. Then it all came back. The wedding, the dress, Alessandro's penthouse, the fact that she was married to a man she'd known for 8 weeks and still couldn't quite figure out. Her phone showed 9:47 a.m. She'd slept almost 12 hours. The apartment was silent when she ventured out of her room, still wearing the pajamas from last night. The main living area was empty, pristine, like no one actually lived here. She found the kitchen, all marble counters and stainless steel, and started opening cabinets looking for coffee. Third one from the left. She spun around. Alessandro stood in the doorway, dressed in dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked like he'd been awake for hours. "You scared me," she said. "Sorry. I thought you heard me come in." Yo. He crossed to the espresso machine, started preparing 2 cups without asking if she wanted one. "How'd you sleep?" "Like the dead." "Good. You needed it." He handed her a cup, perfect crema, the right temperature. "There's food in the fridge if you're hungry, or I can have something brought up." "This is fine." She wrapped her hands around the warm ceramic. "Where were you?" "Morning meeting. I try to handle the urgent things before 8 so the rest of the day stays clear." He leaned against the counter, studying her. "We need to talk about logistics." "Logistics." "Your schedule, my schedule, how we navigate being married while maintaining separate lives." He pulled out his phone, swiped through something. "You have class on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Marco will drive you. He's ex-military, completely professional. He'll wait on campus and bring you back when you're done. I can drive myself." "No, you can't." The flatness in his tone made her bristle. "Excuse me?" "You're a target now, Evelyn. My enemies will look for weaknesses, and a wife who drives herself around campus with no protection is a weakness I can't afford." He set down his phone. "This isn't negotiable. You want to finish school? Fine. But you do it safely." She wanted to argue, but the logic was sound even if she hated it. "What about the rest of the week?" "That's up to you. You have full access to the building amenities, the car service, my credit cards. You want to work, volunteer, take up painting, whatever. Just keep security in the loop so they can plan accordingly." "And when do I see you?" "Dinners when I'm not traveling, public events as needed. I'll give you at least a week's notice. Weekends are usually quiet unless something urgent comes up." He paused. "We should probably eat together a few times a week. Establish a routine. The staff talks, and I need them seeing a functional marriage." "The staff?" "Housekeeper comes twice a week. Chef on call if we're hosting. My assistant, Victoria, you met her, handles scheduling." He checked his watch. "Speaking of which, she'll be here in an hour to go over your calendar for the next month." Evelyn's head was spinning. "This is a lot." "I know, but you'll adapt." He pushed off from the counter. "I have a call at 11. Make yourself at home. This is your space now, too." He started to leave, then stopped. "One more thing. There's a jewelry box in your closet, wedding gift. Wear something from it when we're out together. People notice these things." Then he was gone, leaving her alone with her coffee and the bizarre reality of her new life. She found the jewelry box exactly where he said it would be. Cartier. Inside were pieces that probably cost more than her father's house. Diamond earrings, sapphire bracelets, a string of pearls that looked vintage. A note card sat on top in sharp, masculine handwriting. "These were my mother's. She would have wanted you to have them." Evelyn closed the box carefully, something tight forming in her chest. It was too much, too personal. She didn't know his mother, didn't know anything about his family. This felt like more than a transaction. It felt like trust. Victoria Chen arrived at exactly 11, carrying a tablet and wearing an expression that suggested she didn't waste time on small talk. "Mrs. Vieri." She settled onto the couch, crossing her legs. "How are you adjusting?" "Still figuring out which direction is up." "Fair enough. Let's make it simpler." She pulled up a calendar on her tablet. "You have 3 events this month. Charity gala on the 15th, business dinner on the 22nd, and a private reception on the 30th. Alessandro will attend all 3, and you're expected to accompany him." Expected. It's in your contract. Public appearances as needed to maintain the marriage's legitimacy. Victoria's tone wasn't unkind, just matter of fact. I'll send you briefings on each event. Who'll be there, what topics to avoid, what the dress code is. You'll also need to start building your own social presence. My own what? Lunches with other wives, charity board involvement, that sort of thing. You're married to one of the most powerful men in the city now. People will want access to you, and you need to learn how to manage that without getting eaten alive. Evelyn set down her coffee. I didn't sign up to be a socialite. You signed up to be Alessandro Vieri's wife. The socialite part comes with the territory. Victoria leaned forward slightly. Look, I know this isn't what you wanted, but you're in it now, and you have two choices. You can stumble through it and let people dismiss you as arm candy, or you can learn the game and play it well enough to carve out real power for yourself. What kind of power? The kind that outlasts the marriage. Victoria smiled sharp and knowing. 2 to 3 years, you said in the contract. That's enough time to build a network, establish credibility, position yourself for whatever comes next. Alessandro's name opens doors. What you do once you're through them is up to you. It was the first time anyone had framed this as an opportunity rather than a prison sentence. Evelyn found herself sitting up straighter. What do I need to do? Start with the gala. It's a cancer research fundraiser. Easy crowd, low stakes. Wear something elegant but not flashy. Smile, ask people about themselves. Don't drink more than 2 glasses of wine. Alessandro will handle the business conversations. Your job is to be charming and forgettable. Forgettable? You're new. If you come in too strong, too opinionated, you'll make enemies before you understand the landscape. Better to observe first, learn who matters and who's just noise. Victoria tapped something on her tablet. I'm sending you profiles of the key players you'll meet. Study them. Know their spouses, their business interests, their pet causes. Information is currency in this world. They spent the next hour going through details. Dress designers Victoria recommended, hairstylists who understood discretion, the kind of small talk that built bridges instead of burning them. By the time Victoria left, Evelyn's head was crammed with names and faces and strategic advice that made her feel like she was preparing for war. Maybe she was. She spent the afternoon studying the profiles Victoria had sent. Marcus Chen, real estate developer. Catherine Liang, pharmaceutical heiress. David and Sophia Moretti, who ran a chain of luxury hotels and definitely hated each other based on the way they smiled in photos. Dozens of others, all connected in complex webs of business and marriage and barely concealed animosity. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It's Marco. I'll be your driver. Mr. Vieri wanted me to introduce myself. I'll pick you up Tuesday at 8:15 for your first class. She saved the number, then hesitated before typing back. Thanks. See you then. Another text came through almost immediately, this one from Alessandro. How'd the meeting with Victoria go? Overwhelming. She has that effect. You'll get used to it. She called me Mrs. Vieri. That's your name now. The casual way he said it, like it was simple, settled, made something twist in her stomach. She was Evelyn Vieri. Had been for less than 24 hours and still couldn't wrap her head around it. Dinner at 7, his next text read. Nothing formal, just us. She spent too long picking out clothes for something that was just dinner. Finally settled on dark jeans and a silk blouse that felt appropriate without trying too hard. When she emerged from her room at 6:55, she found Alessandro in the kitchen doing something that looked suspiciously like cooking. You cook? She asked. Don't sound so surprised. He was chopping vegetables with the easy precision of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. My mother insisted all her children learn. She said depending on staff for everything made you weak. How many siblings do you have? Had 2 brothers. They're both dead. He said it without emotion, just fact. Car accident 12 years ago. My father died 6 months later. Heart attack, technically, but really he just gave up. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. He scraped the vegetables into a pan, added olive oil that sizzled on contact. My mother's still around, lives in Italy now. You'll meet her eventually. She'll want to inspect you, make sure I didn't marry someone completely unsuitable. Great. Something to look forward to. He smiled slightly. She'll like you. She has a soft spot for people who don't take my shit. They ate at the kitchen island rather than the formal dining table. Pasta with vegetables and garlic, simple, but better than anything Evelyn had cooked for herself in months. Alessandro asked about her classes, her major, what she planned to do with a chemistry degree. I don't know yet, she admitted. Research, maybe, or pharmaceutical development. I like the idea of making something that helps people. That's more purpose than most people have. He refilled her wine glass. My business started because I was good at seeing what people needed and finding ways to provide it. Turns out that skill set works whether you're running legitimate operations or less legitimate ones. How much of what you do is legitimate? More now than 5 years ago. Less than I'd like. He met her eyes. I'm not going to lie to you about what I am, Evelyn. I've done things that would horrify you. Hurt people, broken laws, made decisions that kept me up at night. But I'm also trying to build something cleaner. Real estate, legal investments, businesses that don't require looking over my shoulder. And the other stuff? Being phased out, carefully. You don't just walk away from certain partnerships without consequences. He set down his fork, which is part of why I needed this marriage. Legitimacy means safety. It means my future children don't inherit the same problems I did. You want children? Someday. Not now. Not with someone who married me under duress. His voice was steady, careful. That's a choice we'd both need to make willingly. The conversation felt too intimate, too real. Evelyn stood, started clearing plates to give herself something to do with her hands. Leave them, Alessandro said. Housekeeper comes in the morning. I'm used to cleaning up after myself. I know, but you don't have to anymore. He stood as well, moved around the island until he was close enough that she could smell his cologne again. That's what I'm trying to give you, Evelyn. Room to breathe, space to figure out who you are when you're not scrambling to survive. I don't know if I know how to do that. Then learn. He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the touch so gentle it made her breath catch. You have time. Use it. She should have stepped back, should have maintained the distance that made this arrangement make sense. Instead, she found herself frozen, caught between wanting to run and wanting to lean into the warmth of his hand. He pulled back first, the moment breaking. I have work to finish. Sleep well, Evelyn. She watched him walk away, then stood alone in the kitchen, trying to understand what the hell had just happened. The next 2 weeks fell into a rhythm that was almost normal. Evelyn went to class on Tuesdays and Thursdays, with Marco waiting patiently in the parking lot both times. Her classmates noticed the car, the driver, the expensive coat she wore that Victoria had insisted she needed. Noticed and started asking questions she deflected with vague answers about a family business. The rest of the week, she explored her new world. The building's gym became her refuge, an hour on the treadmill every morning, pushing herself until her thoughts quieted. She found a library 2 blocks away and spent afternoons there, studying in a corner where no one bothered her. Started accepting lunch invitations from Victoria, who introduced her to other wives in carefully orchestrated meetings that felt like job interviews. Catherine Liang is ruthless but fair, Victoria explained over salads at a restaurant that didn't have prices on the menu. She runs her husband's charitable foundation and has real influence. Get on her good side, she'll open doors. Cross her, and you'll find yourself shut out of every important room in the city. How do I get on her good side? Be competent. She hates incompetence more than anything. Victoria speared a tomato. And don't flirt with her husband. She's killed for less. Killed. Metaphorically, probably. Victoria's smile was wicked. Actually, I'm not entirely sure. Marcus Liang had a mistress 3 years ago. She moved to Singapore very suddenly and never came back. Evenings, Evelyn and Alessandro ate dinner together more often than not. He'd come home around 6, sometimes earlier if he didn't have meetings. They'd cook together, or rather, he'd cook while she chopped things and tried not to feel completely useless. The conversations were careful at first, surface level, but gradually deepened. She learned he'd grown up in Brooklyn, that his father had run a small construction company that barely kept them afloat, that he'd put himself through business school, working 3 jobs and sleeping 4 hours a night, that he'd built his empire from nothing, every piece earned through calculation and risk and sheer stubborn refusal to fail. Why real estate? She asked one night while they worked through a bottle of wine on the couch. It's permanent. You can't liquidate a building and run when things get difficult. It forces you to commit. He swirled his glass. And I liked the idea of creating something physical, something you could point to and say, I built that. Do you ever regret it, the path you took? Every day. He said it without hesitation. But regret doesn't change anything. You just have to decide if what you built is worth what it cost you. She told him about her mother, about growing up in a house full of silence and unspoken resentment, about watching her mother fade into invisibility year by year until there was almost nothing left. I used to wonder why she stayed, Evelyn said, curled into the corner of the couch with her knees pulled up. Why she didn't just leave, take me with her, start over somewhere else. Fear, probably, and the belief that she didn't have options. Alessandro looked at her. You're not her. How do you know? Because you're here. You could have run 8 weeks ago, could have told me to go to hell and disappeared. But you stayed and you're figuring out how to make this work on your terms. That takes a different kind of strength than your mother had. It was the kindest thing anyone had said to her in years. She didn't know how to respond, so she just nodded and let the moment sit between them. The night of the gala arrived too quickly. Evelyn stood in front of her mirror, studying herself in a dress Victoria had selected, midnight blue silk that fell to the floor, with a neckline that was elegant without being revealing. She'd pulled her hair up, wore the diamond earrings from Alessandro's mother's collection. Looked older than 20, more sophisticated than she felt. Alessandro knocked on her door at exactly 7. When she opened it, he stopped mid-sentence, whatever he'd been about to say dying on his lips. You look... He paused, recovered. Good. You look good. Thanks. She grabbed her clutch. You don't look terrible yourself. He wore a tuxedo that probably cost more than a car, fitted perfectly across his shoulders. The bow tie was slightly crooked. Without thinking, she reached up to straighten it, her fingers brushing his collar. There, she said, then realized how close they were standing. Thanks. His voice was rougher than usual. Ready? As I'll ever be. The gala was held at a museum downtown, all marble columns and carefully curated art. They arrived fashionably late, and Evelyn felt every head turn as they walked in together. Alessandro's hand settled on her lower back, steady and possessive. Remember what Victoria told you, he murmured. Smile, be charming, and let me handle the heavy lifting. What if someone asks me a direct question? Answer it. You're not an idiot. Just don't volunteer information about my business dealings or promise anything on my behalf. They made it exactly 12 minutes before Catherine Liang descended on them. She was smaller than Evelyn expected, barely 5'3" even in heels, but she radiated power like some people radiated heat. Her dress was severe black, her jewelry understated, her smile sharp as a blade. Alessandro, how lovely to see you. She turned to Evelyn. And this must be the new Mrs. Vieri. I've heard so much about you. All good things, I hope, Evelyn said, keeping her voice light. Some good? Some interesting. Catherine's eyes were assessing, taking in every detail. You're younger than I expected. I get that a lot. I'm sure you do. She sipped her champagne. Tell me, what are your interests? Charity work, I assume? All the wives get involved in something. I'm still figuring that out, actually. I'm finishing my degree first. A degree? Catherine's eyebrow lifted. How practical. What field? Chemistry. Really? For the first time, something like genuine interest flickered across Catherine's face. My foundation funds cancer research. We could always use someone who understands the science side. Most of my board members couldn't tell you the difference between a protein and a carbohydrate. Evelyn felt Alessandro's hand tighten slightly on her back. A warning or encouragement, she couldn't tell. I'd be interested in learning more about the foundation's work. Good. Call my office next week. We'll have lunch. Catherine nodded to Alessandro. She's smart. Don't waste that. Then she was gone, gliding off to terrorize someone else. Well, Alessandro said quietly. That went better than expected. She terrifies me. She terrifies everyone. But she likes you, which means you just gained a very powerful ally. He steered her toward the bar. Come on, let's get you a drink before the next interrogation. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations and careful navigation. Evelyn met dozens of people whose names she'd studied, whose faces she recognized from Victoria's briefings. She smiled, asked questions, remembered details about children and vacation homes and business ventures, let Alessandro handle anything that veered too close to dangerous territory. By 11, her face hurt from smiling and her feet were screaming in her heels. "Can we leave?" she asked Alessandro during a rare moment alone. "Absolutely." He looked relieved. "I've made all the appearances I need to. Let's get out of here." They slipped out through a side entrance, and Evelyn breathed actual fresh air for the first time in 4 hours. The car was waiting, Marco holding the door open. "How'd I do?" she asked once they were moving through the city streets. "Better than good. Catherine Liang doesn't offer mentorship to just anyone. She sees potential in you." He loosened his bow tie. "And you handled Marcus Chen perfectly, friendly without being flirtatious, knowledgeable without being threatening." "I didn't realize I was being tested." "Everyone's always being tested in that world. You just passed the first round." They rode in comfortable silence for a while. Evelyn leaned her head against the window, watching the city blur past. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For not making me do that alone. For being—" she searched for the right word. "Present. You didn't have to stay by my side all night." "Yes, I did. That's the deal." But his voice was softer than usual. "Besides, I wasn't going to throw you to the wolves on your first night out. That would be poor strategy." "Everything's strategy with you, isn't it?" "Not everything." He looked at her, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "Some things are just consideration." When they got home, Evelyn kicked off her heels in the elevator and walked barefoot across the penthouse floor. Alessandro disappeared into his office to handle something urgent, and she changed into pajamas, scrubbed off her makeup, and crawled into bed. Her phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. "Catherine Liang called me. She's impressed. Well done." Another text, this one from an unknown number. "This is Catherine. Lunch next Thursday at noon. My office will send details. Don't be late." Evelyn stared at the messages, something like pride warming in her chest. She'd done it. She'd walked into that room full of sharks and not only survived, but made an impression. Maybe Victoria was right. Maybe there was power to be claimed here, if she was smart enough to take it. She was almost asleep when she heard her door creak open. Alessandro stood in the doorway, still in his tuxedo pants and unbuttoned shirt. "Just checking you're okay," he said quietly. "I'm good. Tired, but good." "You did well tonight, Evelyn. Really well." He hesitated. "I know this isn't the life you chose, but you're handling it better than anyone could have expected." "Including you?" "Especially me." He smiled slightly. "Sleep well." He closed the door and Evelyn lay in the dark, thinking about strategy and survival and the strange, unexpected partnership forming between them. Outside, the city hummed with its endless noise, and for the first time since her father's phone call, she didn't feel like she was drowning. She felt like maybe, just maybe, she was learning to swim. The lunch with Catherine Liang happened in a conference room that felt more like an operating theater, sterile, efficient, designed for dissection. Catherine didn't waste time on pleasantries. The moment Evelyn sat down, a folder slid across the table toward her. "This is our current research portfolio," Catherine said. 12 projects, varying stages of development. I need someone who can read the actual science and tell me which ones are worth continued investment and which ones are expensive fantasies dressed up in jargon. Evelyn opened the folder, scanned the first page. Dense technical language, protein markers, trial phases. "You want me to evaluate these?" "I want you to learn how. You said you understand chemistry. Prove it." Catherine's smile was thin. "You have 2 weeks. Come back with assessments I can use, and we'll talk about a formal position on the advisory board." "And if I can't?" "Then you're wasting my time, and I don't give second chances." Catherine stood, signaling the lunch was over before they'd even ordered food. "My assistant will send you access credentials for the full research database. Don't share them with anyone, including your husband. This stays between us." Evelyn left with the folder clutched against her chest, and the distinct feeling she'd just been handed both a test and a trap. She spent the next week buried in research papers, cross-referencing trial data, teaching herself oncology terminology she'd never needed in her undergraduate classes. Alessandro noticed her camped out at the dining table surrounded by printouts and highlighters, her laptop balanced on a stack of medical journals. "New hobby?" he asked one evening, setting down a cup of coffee next to her elbow. "Catherine Liang's version of hazing." She rubbed her eyes. She wants me to evaluate her foundation's research portfolio. That's actually significant. She doesn't trust that kind of analysis to just anyone. He picked up one of the papers, skimmed it. This is beyond what you'd cover in undergrad. I know, I'm learning as I go. She took the coffee gratefully. Half of this is over my head, but I'm starting to see patterns. Which projects have solid methodology? Which ones are built on shaky assumptions? And 3 of these should have been killed months ago. They're chasing results that the data doesn't support, but nobody wants to admit they've sunk 2 years and millions of dollars into dead ends. She pulled up a spreadsheet she'd been building. But there are 2 that look genuinely promising. Targeted therapies with clean trial results and reproducible outcomes. Alessandro studied her screen, then her face. You're good at this. I'm okay at it. There's a difference. No, you're good. Most people couldn't parse this level of technical detail, let alone synthesize it into actionable intelligence. He sat down across from her. Catherine's going to offer you a real position. Are you going to take it? I don't know. It feels like a lot of responsibility. It is, but you're capable of handling it. He paused. And it's yours, Evelyn. Not because you're my wife, but because you earned it. Don't underestimate what that's worth. She worked until 2 a.m, then slept 4 hours and went back at it. By the time her follow-up meeting with Catherine arrived, she had a 20-page report with clear recommendations, risk assessments, and projected outcomes. Catherine read it in silence, her expression giving away nothing. When she finally looked up, something almost like approval flickered in her eyes. You flagged the Morrison trial. The data's been manipulated, not egregiously, but enough to make the results look more promising than they are. If you dig into the actual patient outcomes versus the summary statistics, the discrepancy is obvious. I've been arguing with my board about that project for 6 months. They insisted I was being paranoid. Catherine closed the folder. You just gave me the ammunition I needed to kill it. So I passed? You exceeded expectations, which is rare enough to be notable. Catherine pulled out her phone, typed something quickly. I'm adding you to the advisory board, quarterly meetings, plus ad hoc consultations when needed. You'll be compensated separately from any household finances. This is your money, your work. Evelyn's throat tightened. Thank you. Don't thank me. You earned it. Catherine stood, extended her hand. Welcome to the game, Mrs. Vieri. Try not to disappoint me. They shook, and Evelyn felt something shift inside her. This wasn't charity or nepotism or anyone doing her favors because of who she'd married. This was hers. She texted Alessandro on the way home. I got the position. His response came immediately. Never doubted it. Dinner tonight to celebrate. You're cooking? I'm ordering from that Italian place you like. Close enough. She smiled at her phone, and Marco caught her eye in the rearview mirror. Good news, Mrs. Vieri? Yeah, she said. Really good news. But good news had a way of attracting bad attention. The threat came 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday that started like any other. Evelyn was in her chemistry lab, pipetting solutions and half listening to her lab partner complain about his girlfriend, when Marco appeared in the doorway. His face was tight, professional, but she'd learned to read the tension in his shoulders. Something was wrong. Mrs. Vieri, we need to leave. Now. Her lab partner looked up, confused. Evelyn was already packing her things. What happened? Not here. Marco's hand hovered near his jacket, where she knew he kept his gun. Car's running. Stay close to me. They moved quickly through the science building, Marco's eyes scanning every face, every doorway. The SUV was parked illegally right outside, engine idling. He practically shoved her into the back seat. Marco, you're scaring me. Mr. Vieri received a credible threat against you this morning. We're going somewhere safe until his team can assess the situation. He pulled into traffic, driving fast but controlled. He's already on his way. A threat from who? Someone who wants leverage against your husband. That's all I can tell you right now. They didn't go to the penthouse. Instead, Marco drove to a building Evelyn had never seen before. Nondescript, industrial, the kind of place you'd pass without noticing. Underground parking, private elevator that required both a key card and a fingerprint scan. The doors opened onto what looked like a high-end apartment, but the reinforced walls and lack of windows gave it away. This was a safe house. Alessandro was already there on his phone, his voice cold and clipped in a language Evelyn didn't recognize. When he saw her, he ended the call abruptly. "Are you okay?" He crossed to her, his hands framing her face, tilting it up so he could check for himself. "I'm fine. Marco got me out fast." She grabbed his wrists. "What's going on?" "Vincent DeLuca is making noise. Apparently he's not happy about how your father's debt was settled." Alessandro's jaw was tight. "He sent word this morning that he's considering alternative forms of collection." "Meaning me." "Meaning he's testing boundaries to see if I'll fold." He dropped his hands, stepped back. "I won't, but I need you somewhere secure until I handle this." "Handle it how?" "However I need to." His expression was hard, dangerous. "This is the part of my life I've tried to keep separate from you. But you're involved now, whether I like it or not." Evelyn looked around the safe house. The reinforced door, the security monitors showing multiple camera angles, the go bag sitting by the entrance. "How long do I have to stay here?" "A few days, maybe a week. Just until I make it clear that touching you means war he can't afford." He pulled out his phone again. "I have to go. Marco stays with you. There's food, books, whatever you need. Don't leave for any reason." "Alessandro, I will fix this." He cupped her cheek briefly, his thumb brushing her jaw. "I promise." Then he was gone, and Evelyn was alone with Marco and the suffocating reality that her life was now valuable enough to be a target. The first day crawled by like torture. She tried to study, couldn't focus. Tried to sleep, lay awake staring at the ceiling. Marco was professional but uncommunicative, stationed by the door like a statue. The second day her phone rang. "Alessandro, how are you holding up?" His voice was rough, tired. "I'm going insane. What's happening out there?" "Conversations, negotiations, making it very clear what happens to people who threaten what's mine." A pause. "DeLuca's smart. He'll back down. And if he doesn't, then I'll make him." Something in his tone made her shiver. "I need you to understand something, Evelyn. I've spent years building legitimacy, trying to transition into cleaner operations. But if someone comes after you, I will burn everything I've built to keep you safe." No hesitation. "You can't mean that." "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." Background noise filtered through the phone. Voices. Footsteps. "I have to go. I'll call you tonight. Be careful." "Always am." But when he called that night, she could hear the exhaustion in his voice, the weight of decisions she couldn't begin to understand. On the third day, something shifted. Marco got a call, spoke in rapid Italian, then turned to her. "Pack up. We're moving you." "Moving me where?" "Mr. Vieri's main office. He wants you there." The office was in a building downtown, 30 floors of steel and glass that housed Vieri Enterprises' legitimate operations. Marco took her up to the top floor, through security that made the safe house look casual. Alessandro's office was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than most cars, and absolutely no personal touches except a single photo on his desk. His mother, Evelyn realized. The only piece of his past he kept visible. Alessandro was on a call when she entered, but he gestured for her to sit. She took one of the leather chairs facing his desk and waited. "I don't care what he said," Alessandro was saying, his voice ice cold. "He made a threat. I responded proportionally. If he doesn't like the consequences, he should have thought harder before opening his mouth." A pause. "Tell Vincent that Evelyn Vieri is off limits, permanently. If he needs that explained in smaller words, I'm happy to deliver the message personally." He ended the call, set down the phone carefully. "Sorry, last piece of housekeeping. Is it handled?" "It's handled. DeLuca got the message. You're safe." He stood, moved around the desk to lean against it in front of her. "But this was a warning shot, Evelyn. There will be others. People who think they can use you to get to me. So what do we do? We make you less of an easy target." He pulled a tablet from his desk, brought up what looked like a schedule. "Self-defense training, starting next week. Security protocols you'll need to memorize. And I'm assigning you a permanent detail. 2 people, rotating shifts, whenever you're outside the penthouse or this building. I'll have bodyguards following me around campus?" "Yes, non-negotiable." His expression softened slightly. I know you hate this. I know it feels like a cage, but I will not lose you because I was too proud or too cheap to provide adequate protection. The intensity in his voice startled her. This wasn't strategic calculation. This was something raw, more personal. Okay, she said quietly. I'll do the training. Thank you. He checked his watch. I have a meeting in 10 minutes, but after that I'm done for the day. Come back tonight. We'll have dinner, decompress, pretend we're normal people for a few hours. We're not normal people. No, he agreed, but we can pretend. That night, over Thai food eaten straight from takeout containers, Alessandro told her what had happened in the 3 days she'd been locked away. I called in favors from people who terrified DeLuca, made it very clear that harming you would result in economic warfare he couldn't survive. He speared a piece of chicken. I also may have suggested that certain business interests of his might face unexpected legal scrutiny if anything happened to you. You threaten him with the cops? I threaten him with the IRS. Much scarier. A slight smile. He's backing off. The message has been sent to anyone else who might get ideas. What message? That you're not a weakness to exploit. You're a line that, if crossed, means total war. He set down his fork, looked at her directly. I meant what I said, Evelyn. I would burn it all down for you. Why? The question burst out before she could stop it. This was supposed to be a transaction, a business arrangement. When did it become something worth starting wars over? Alessandro was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. I don't know exactly when it changed. Maybe the first time you called me on my bullshit instead of just accepting it. Maybe when you took that position with Catherine on your own merit instead of trading on my name. Maybe it was watching you handle that gala like you'd been doing it your whole life. He leaned forward. Or maybe it was realizing that somewhere in the past few months, you stopped being an obligation and started being someone I actually give a damn about. Her heart was hammering against her ribs. Alessandro, I'm not asking you to feel the same way. I know this wasn't your choice, and I know you probably still hate me half the time for being part of the reason you're in this situation. He stood, started pacing. But I need you to know that keeping you safe isn't strategy anymore. It's personal, and that changes things. Evelyn sat frozen, trying to process what he was telling her. Somewhere in the carefully maintained distance between them, something had shifted. She'd felt it too, in the moments when he made her laugh, when he cooked for her, when he looked at her like she was more than just a convenient wife. I don't hate you, she said quietly. He stopped pacing. No? No, I'm still angry about how this started. I'm still figuring out who I am in this life. But you, she stood, moved closer to him. You've given me more freedom and respect in 3 months than my father gave me in 20 years. You've protected me, supported my choices, treated me like I have a brain. So no, I don't hate you. What do you feel? His voice was rough. I don't know yet, but it's not nothing. She reached up, did what she'd wanted to do for weeks, touched his face, felt the roughness of stubble against her palm. I think that scares me more than DeLuca or any threat you could neutralize with phone calls. He caught her hand, held it against his cheek. We don't have to figure it all out tonight. Good, because I have no idea what I'm doing. Neither do I. He smiled, and it transformed his face, made him look younger, less dangerous. We'll mess it up together. The kiss happened naturally, inevitably. He leaned down, she rose up, and suddenly his mouth was on hers and nothing else mattered. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was 3 months of tension and careful distance finally breaking, all that restrained want pouring out at once. His hands were in her hair, on her waist, pulling her closer. She grabbed his shirt, felt the solid warmth of him through the fabric. The kiss deepened, turned hungry, and she heard herself make a sound she didn't recognize. Alessandro pulled back, breathing hard. Evelyn, don't you dare apologize. I wasn't going to. He rested his forehead against hers. But we should probably slow down before I forget every promise I made about not pushing you into anything. What if I want to be pushed? Then I'd say we should still slow down, because this needs to be something you're sure about. Not something that happens because you're grateful I protected you, or because the adrenaline's still running high from the past few days. He kissed her forehead gently. I can wait, Evelyn, as long as you need. Us. It was the restraint that decided her. The fact that he could want her, and she could see that he did, could feel it in the tension of his body, and still put her choice first. I'm not ready for everything, she said carefully, but I think I'm ready for something, for this to be real instead of just pretend. Define real. I don't know. We figure it out as we go? She looked up at him. No more separate lives that only intersect for appearances. Actually sharing space, being partners in more than just name. I can do that. He traced her jawline with his thumb. Fair warning, I'm bad at relationships. I work too much, I'm terrible at talking about feelings, and I have a nasty habit of trying to solve problems by throwing money at them. And I'm 20 years old with trust issues and a tendency to shut down when things get overwhelming. She smiled. We're a disaster waiting to happen. Probably. He kissed her again, softer this time. Want to find out anyway? Yeah, she said. I really do. They spent the rest of the night on the couch, talking until 3 in the morning about things that mattered and things that didn't. He told her about growing up poor, about his mother's iron will, and his father's quiet desperation. She told him about her mother's illness, about feeling invisible in her own home, about the guilty relief she'd felt when the cancer finally took her. When they finally went to bed, separate rooms still, but with doors left open, Evelyn lay awake thinking about the strange path that had brought her here. 6 months ago, she'd been a college student with a normal life and normal problems. Now she was married to a man who'd started gang wars to protect her, working with one of the most powerful women in the city, learning to navigate a world she'd never imagined being part of. It should have terrified her. Maybe it did, a little, but it also felt like she was finally becoming someone real instead of just surviving. The self-defense training started the following Monday. Alessandro had hired someone named Kira Chen, no relation to Catherine apparently, though they shared the same ruthless efficiency. Kira was 5'0" of pure muscle and attitude, and she didn't believe in gentle introductions. You're small, young, and female, she said bluntly in their first session. In a fight, those are disadvantages. We're going to turn them into weapons. 3 times a week, Evelyn showed up at the building's private gym and let Kira throw her around, teach her pressure points and leverage, how to use an attacker's size against them. It was brutal, exhausting, and she loved it. You're getting better, Kira said after their 4th week. Still too hesitant, but better. You need to commit to the strike. Half measures get you killed. Encouraging. I'm not here to encourage. I'm here to keep you alive. Kira tossed her a water bottle. Mr. Vieri's paying me well to make sure you can handle yourself if his security fails. Don't make me look bad. Evelyn also started spending time in Alessandro's actual world, not the cleaned-up version he presented at charity galas, but the real operations he ran. He started bringing her to meetings, letting her observe how deals were made, how he read people, how he knew when someone was lying before they finished their sentence. Watch his hands, Alessandro murmured during one negotiation. He's trying to look confident, but his fingers keep tapping his leg. Nervous tell. So what do we do? Push harder. If he's nervous, he's got more room to give. Alessandro leaned forward, named a price that made the other man's eyes widen. That's my final offer. Take it or walk. The man took it. Afterward, in the car, Alessandro looked at her. What did you think? I think you're terrifying when you want to be. Good. That's the point. He squeezed her hand. But you need to learn this too. Not because I expect you to negotiate deals, but because understanding how power works keeps you from being crushed by it. She was learning. Watching how he controlled rooms without raising his voice, how he made people believe they'd gotten what they wanted while he walked away with exactly what he needed. It was manipulation, yes, but it was also survival at the highest level. Catherine noticed the change during their next advisory board meeting. You're different, she said over coffee afterward. More settled, less like you're constantly bracing for impact. I'm figuring things out. With your husband, it wasn't a question. Good. Alessandro needs someone who can match him. Otherwise, he'll steamroll right over you without meaning to. Speaking from experience? Speaking from observation. I've known Alessandro for 10 years. He's brilliant, loyal, and absolutely ruthless when protecting what's his. Catherine studied her. The question is whether you're his partner or his possession. Partner, Evelyn said firmly. Then prove it. Don't just learn his world. Build your own. Make yourself indispensable in ways that have nothing to do with being his wife. It was advice she took to heart. Over the next month, Evelyn threw herself into the foundation work with an intensity that surprised even Catherine. She didn't just evaluate research proposals. She started connecting with the scientists directly, understanding their work beyond the data, identifying promising talent that larger institutions had overlooked. You found us a lead investigator from University Hospital, Catherine said, scanning the report Evelyn had submitted. How? I went to their research symposium. Talked to the grad students, the postdocs, the people doing actual work instead of just presenting papers. Doctor, Sarah Martinez has been publishing incredible results on targeted protein therapy, but she's buried under 3 senior researchers who keep taking credit. Evelyn pulled up Martinez's publication record. Give her proper funding and autonomy, and she'll change the field. You're sure? I'm sure enough to stake my reputation on it. Catherine smiled. Then let's bring her in. When Evelyn told Alessandro about it that night, he looked at her with something close to pride. You're not just surviving anymore, he said. You're building something real. I learned from the best. She curled into his side on the couch, something that had become natural over the past weeks. Catherine terrifies me, but she's also teaching me how to see opportunities everyone else misses. She's teaching you how to wield power. That's a dangerous skill. Is that why you look so pleased about it? He laughed. Maybe. I like watching you grow into yourself. Seeing you realize how capable you actually are. They'd gotten more comfortable with physical affection, casual touches, kisses that sometimes turned heated before one of them pulled back, sleeping in the same bed more nights than not, even if they weren't having sex. It felt like a relationship instead of an arrangement, organic instead of forced. But they hadn't crossed that final line. Alessandro was careful, maybe too careful, always checking that she was sure, that she wanted this, that he wasn't pushing too hard. Until the night she decided she was done waiting. They'd been at a business dinner, one of those interminable affairs full of people trying too hard to impress. Alessandro had been tense all evening, his jaw tight with barely suppressed irritation. When they finally got home, he'd poured himself a drink and stood by the windows, staring out at the city. Evelyn came up behind him, wrapped her arms around his waist. You okay? Just tired of politics, tired of performing. He set down his glass, turned in her arms. Some days I miss when things were simpler, when I could just handle problems directly instead of navigating 15 layers of corporate bullshit. You mean when you could threaten people instead of negotiating with them? Exactly. He smiled slightly. See, you get it. She kissed him, and he responded immediately, his hands settling on her hips. But when she pressed closer, when her fingers started working on his shirt buttons, he pulled back. Evelyn, I'm sure. She met his eyes. I've been sure for weeks. I'm just waiting for you to stop being quite so chivalrous about it. I don't want you to regret this. The only thing I'll regret is if you keep treating me like I'll break. She finished unbuttoning his shirt, slid her hands across his chest. I know what I want, Alessandro. And I want you. Something in his expression shifted, the careful control cracking, raw want bleeding through. Once we do this, there's no going back to the way things were. Good. I don't want to go back. He kissed her hard, lifted her against him, and carried her to his bedroom without another word. Later, wrapped in his sheets with his arm around her and his heartbeat steady under her ear, Evelyn thought about the impossible journey that had brought her here. From that phone call in her chemistry lab to this moment, married to a man she was maybe falling in love with, building a career that mattered, learning to claim power instead of just surviving its wake. What are you thinking? Alessandro's voice was drowsy, content. That my father sold me to save his own skin. That's a depressing thought for right now. Let me finish. She propped herself up on one elbow, looked down at him. He sold me thinking I'd be miserable, trapped, powerless. Instead, I'm here, with you, doing work I care about, becoming someone I actually like. He tried to destroy my life, and instead he accidentally gave me one worth living. Alessandro tucked her hair behind her ear. That's a much better thought. I'm not saying I'm grateful for how it happened, I'm still angry at him, at the situation, at all of it, but I'm not going to let that anger keep me from appreciating what I've built. What we've built, he corrected. This is a partnership, remember? Yeah, she said, kissing him softly. It is. She fell asleep wrapped around him, safe and chosen, and finally, genuinely happy. And had no idea that everything was about to get much more complicated. The complication arrived in the form of a manila envelope slid under their door at 3 a.m. Evelyn found it when she got up for water, nearly tripping over it in the dark hallway. She brought it back to the bedroom, turned on the lamp. Alessandro stirred beside her. What's that? His voice was rough with sleep. I don't know. Someone left it outside. He was instantly awake, taking the envelope from her hands. Did you see anyone? No, it was just there. He opened it carefully, pulled out a stack of photographs. His expression went completely blank, the kind of empty that meant he was furious and working hard to control it. What is it? Evelyn leaned over to look. The photographs were surveillance shots. Her leaving campus, getting coffee with Catherine, walking into the foundation offices. Someone had been following her for weeks, documenting her movements with professional precision. There's a note, Alessandro said, his voice deadly quiet. He handed her a single piece of paper. The message was typed. Untraceable. She moves around the city so freely, such a trusting girl. Wouldn't it be a shame if something happened to her while you were busy playing businessman? Consider this a reminder that some debts never fully settle. We'll be in touch. No signature. Didn't need one. DeLuca, Evelyn whispered, or someone working for him, testing boundaries again. Alessandro was already on his phone, making calls. I'm doubling your security. No more walking anywhere without a full detail. No more, Alessandro. Unauthorized movements. You stay in controlled environments until Alessandro. She grabbed his arm. Stop. He looked at her, and she saw something she'd never seen before in his eyes. Fear. They're threatening you, he said. They're showing me they can reach you whenever they want. That's not a test, Evelyn. That's a promise. I know, but locking me in a cage won't solve this. It'll keep you alive. For how long? Until the next threat? The one after that? She took the phone from his hand, set it down. You told me once not to be a victim, not to be some trembling thing you have to manage. So don't turn me into one now. This is different. This is what you warned me about. This is the world you live in, and I knew that when I decided to be your actual partner instead of just your legal wife. She held his gaze. So, teach me. Show me how to protect myself instead of just hiding behind your security team. He stared at her for a long moment, then pulled her against him, his arms tight around her. You terrify me sometimes. Good. Keeps things interesting. She pulled back. What do we do? We make them regret sending that envelope. He picked up his phone again. But first, we find out exactly who's behind this. By dawn, Alessandro's office was full of people Evelyn had never met. Hard-eyed men in expensive suits who spoke in coded language and moved like violence was always an option. His inner circle, the ones who handled problems that couldn't be solved through legitimate channels. Run the surveillance footage from every camera within 3 blocks of this building for the past week, Alessandro was saying. Someone hand-delivered that envelope. I want to know who. A man named Victor, broad-shouldered, with scar tissue around his knuckles, nodded. Already on it. We'll have something by noon. Not good enough. I want it in 2 hours. Alessandro's voice could have cut glass. And pull the files on everyone who's made noise about the cross-debt settlement. Someone's coordinating this, and I want to know who. Evelyn sat in the corner watching him work. This was the Alessandro most people never saw. Not the smooth businessman or the careful husband, but the man who'd built an empire through calculated ruthlessness. Every word was a command, every gesture precise. He was terrifying and compelling in equal measure. Mrs. Vieri, Victor approached her. We're going to need you to make some changes to your routine, different routes to campus, varied timing, additional security protocols. Whatever you need. Good. He pulled out a tablet, started walking her through procedures. You see anything unusual? Same car twice, someone watching you, anything that feels off? You call this number immediately. Don't wait. Don't second-guess yourself. We'd rather respond to 10 false alarms than miss one real threat. They spent the next hour drilling emergency protocols, safe routes, code words that would trigger immediate extraction. It was overwhelming and necessary, and made Evelyn's head spin with information. By the time Victor's team left, the sun was fully up, and Alessandro looked like he'd aged 5 years overnight. "You should try to sleep," Evelyn said. "Can't. Not until we have answers." He poured himself coffee that was probably his 4th cup. "You should go back to bed, though. You have class later." "I'm not going to class today." "Yes, you are. I'm not letting these bastards disrupt your life more than necessary." "Alessandro, you said you didn't want to be locked away. Fine, but that means maintaining your normal schedule as much as possible, showing them they can't control you through fear." He pulled her close, kissed her forehead. "Marco and 2 additional guards will be with you. You'll be safe." She wanted to argue, but he was right. Hiding would be letting them win. Class was surreal. She sat in her usual seat, took notes on reaction kinetics, and tried to ignore the fact that 3 armed men were stationed around the building watching for threats. Her lab partner asked if everything was okay, and she said fine, just some family stuff, nothing to worry about. The lie tasted bitter. When she got home that afternoon, Alessandro was on the phone speaking rapid Italian, his free hand gesturing sharply. He saw her, held up a finger. 1 minute. She changed out of her school clothes, washed her face, tried to pretend her hands weren't shaking slightly from residual adrenaline. "We have something," Alessandro said when she came back out. The footage caught a courier service making the delivery. Victor's team traced it back to a shell company that's been flagged in 3 previous investigations related to DeLuca's operations. So it is him. It's someone in his network. Whether he ordered it directly or someone's acting independently, we don't know yet. He rubbed his face. "I have a meeting with him tomorrow. Neutral territory, witnesses present. We're going to settle this. I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not." "Alessandro, this is not negotiable, Evelyn. DeLuca is dangerous, unpredictable, and currently pissed off enough to be making threats against you. You are not walking into a room with him." "Then how is this supposed to end? You make a deal, shake hands, and trust that he'll suddenly respect boundaries?" She crossed her arms. "I'm the one he's threatening. I should be there when you tell him it stops." "You should be nowhere near him." "Why? Because I'm fragile? Because I need protecting?" Her voice rose. "You've spent months teaching me to be stronger, to claim power, to stop being a victim. Now you want me to hide while you handle the scary men?" "I want you alive," the words exploded out of him. "I want you safe and whole, and not in the crosshairs of someone who's killed people for less than what we're arguing about. Is that so unreasonable?" The rawness in his voice stopped her. This wasn't about control or strategy. This was about the fact that he genuinely couldn't handle the thought of her being in danger. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I know you're trying to protect me, but you can't keep me in a bubble forever." "I can try." He pulled her against him, buried his face in her hair. "I can't lose you, Evelyn. I won't survive that." "You're not going to lose me." She held him tight. "But we have to end this, really end it. Not just make temporary peace that falls apart next time DeLuca feels like testing you." "I know. That's what tomorrow is about." He pulled back, framed her face with his hands. "Trust me to handle this. Please." She nodded, even though everything in her wanted to be part of the solution instead of the problem that needed solving. That night, Alessandro barely slept. Evelyn woke around 2 a.m. to find him standing by the windows again, staring out at the city with a glass of scotch in his hand. "Come back to bed," she said. "In a minute." She got up, wrapped herself around him from behind. "What are you thinking about?" "Every possible way tomorrow goes wrong." His voice was hollow. "Every scenario where I miscalculate and you end up paying for it." "That's not going to happen." "You don't know that. I don't know that." He turned in her arms. "DeLuca's unstable. He's lost ground over the past year, and desperate men make unpredictable choices. I can't guarantee I can control the situation." "Then don't control it. End it." She looked up at him. "Whatever it takes to make sure he never comes after us again. Do that." "You don't know what you're asking." "I know exactly what I'm asking." She held his gaze. "I'm asking you to do whatever needs to be done so we can actually have a life together instead of constantly looking over our shoulders." He searched her face for a long moment, then kissed her hard. I love you. I don't think I've said that yet, but I do. And tomorrow I'm going to make damn sure we get our future back. Her heart stopped. You love me? Terrifies me too, but yeah. A slight smile. Probably started the day you told me you hated that wedding dress. Definitely confirmed when you went toe-to-toe with Catherine Liang and won. But right now, holding you while planning how to handle a mobster who's threatening your life? Yeah, this is love. Inconvenient, complicated, probably going to get us both killed eventually, but love nonetheless. Evelyn laughed, surprising herself. You have terrible timing. Story of my life, he kissed her again, softer. But I needed you to know, in case tomorrow doesn't go the way I'm planning. It'll go fine. You're brilliant at this. I'm adequate at this. Brilliant is overstating it. He finished his scotch, set down the glass. Come on. Let's get a few hours of sleep before I have to go be terrifying. They went back to bed, and Evelyn lay in his arms thinking about the fact that this man, dangerous, complicated, occasionally infuriating, loved her. And somewhere in the past months of forced proximity and careful negotiation and slow-building trust, she'd fallen in love with him too. She should tell him, but the words stuck in her throat, too big and too frightening to say out loud. Tomorrow, she thought. After he handles this, after we're safe, I'll tell him tomorrow. Alessandro left early, before dawn. He kissed her goodbye, told her to stay in the penthouse with security until he got back, and walked out looking like he was going to war. Which, in a way, he was. Evelyn tried to study. Tried to work on the foundation evaluations Catherine had sent. Tried to do anything except watch the clock and imagine everything that could go wrong. At 11, Victoria called. Have you heard from Alessandro? No. Why? The meeting was supposed to be at 10. My contact at the venue says both parties showed up, but there's been no communication since they went into the private room. A pause. That's unusual. These things normally take an hour at most. Should I be worried? I don't know yet. I'm monitoring the situation. I'll call you if I hear anything. The line went dead, and Evelyn's stomach twisted with anxiety. Noon came and went. Still nothing. At 1 p.m., Marco appeared in the penthouse. His expression was carefully neutral, which somehow made it worse. Mrs. Vieri, I need you to come with me. What happened? Where's Alessandro? He's fine, but he needs you at the office. Now. She didn't bother grabbing anything except her phone. Marco drove with silent efficiency, and 20 minutes later they were pulling into the underground garage of Alessandro's building. The office was chaos when she arrived. People on phones, laptops open, the kind of controlled crisis management that spoke to something significant happening. Alessandro stood at the center of it, issuing commands, and when he saw her, his entire expression shifted. Evelyn, thank you for coming. He crossed to her, pulled her aside. Are you okay? Am I? Alessandro, what the hell happened? Victoria said the meeting went long and then radio silence and DeLuca's dead. The words hit her like a physical blow. What? Heart attack during the meeting. Massive coronary. Completely unexpected. Alessandro's voice was flat, factual. The paramedics couldn't revive him. He was pronounced dead at the scene 40 minutes ago. Evelyn stared at him, trying to process. That's convenient. Very. He met her eyes, and something in his expression told her everything she needed to know. Did you? I sat across from him at a table in a room with 8 witnesses and 2 security cameras. I shook his hand, we talked for 90 minutes about territory agreements and financial settlements, and then he clutched his chest and collapsed. His voice didn't waver. The medical examiner will find coronary artery disease probably genetic, stress-induced cardiac event, tragic but not suspicious. Alessandro? She kept her voice low. Tell me the truth. I'm telling you the truth. Vincent DeLuca died of a heart attack in front of multiple witnesses who will all testify that I was nowhere near him when it happened. He cupped her face gently. And now the threat against you is gone, permanently. She should have been horrified, should have pushed him away, demanded to know exactly what he'd done and how. Instead, all she felt was relief so intense it made her knees weak. Is it really over? His organization is in chaos. His second-in-command is already making overtures about peace. They're not going to risk a war over a dead man's grudge. He pulled her close. It's over, Evelyn. You're safe. She buried her face against his chest, felt his heart beating steady and sure. Later, she'd think about the implications, about what it meant to be married to someone capable of this kind of calculated action. Later, she'd wrestle with the morality of feeling grateful that a man was dead. Right now, she'd just held on to Alessandro and breathed. The next week was strange. DeLuca's death made headlines. Prominent businessman dies unexpectedly, tributes from people who'd probably hated him, speculation about what would happen to his various enterprises. The police investigated briefly, found nothing suspicious, closed the case. Alessandro went to the funeral, paid his respects, shook hands with DeLuca's family, played the role of respectful rival. Came home and poured himself a drink with hands that didn't shake. "How was it?" Evelyn asked. "Necessary." He loosened his tie. "His son thanked me for coming, said his father always respected me, even when they were in competition." "Do you feel guilty?" "No." The answer was immediate, honest. "He threatened you. He made it clear he was going to keep pushing until someone got hurt. I removed the threat. That's not guilt-worthy." "Even if you—" She stopped, unsure how to finish the sentence. "Even if I arranged circumstances that led to a specific outcome." He looked at her directly. "I told you I'd burn everything down to keep you safe. I meant it, and I'd do it again without hesitation." She should have been frightened by the certainty in his voice. Instead, she crossed to him, took his face in her hands, and kissed him. "I love you," she said against his mouth. "I should have said it when you did, but I was scared. But I'm saying it now. I love you, Alessandro Vieri, and I'm not sorry about what you did to protect us." His arms came around her, tight enough to hurt. "Say it again. I love you. Again. I love you." She pulled back to look at him. "And I'm choosing this. Choosing you, choosing us, choosing this life. Not because I was sold into it, but because it's what I want." He kissed her like she was oxygen, like he'd been drowning and she was air. They made it as far as the couch before clothes started coming off. Desperation and relief and love all tangled together. Later, wrapped in a blanket with Alessandro's arm around her, Evelyn thought about the girl she'd been 6 months ago. Terrified, powerless, resigned to a life she hadn't chosen. That girl would never recognize who she'd become, confident, capable, married to a man she loved who'd literally killed to keep her safe. "What are you thinking?" Alessandro's voice was drowsy, content. "That I'm not the same person I was when this started." "Neither am I." He kissed her temple. "You changed me, Evelyn. Made me want things I'd written off as impossible. A real partnership. Someone to build with instead of just someone to keep on the shelf looking pretty. I was never going to be good at the shelf thing. Thank God for that." He pulled her closer. "So what now? We've eliminated the immediate threat. Your position with Catherine is solid. School's going well. We actually like each other. What's next?" "I don't know. What do normal couples do?" "We're not a normal couple." "Fair point." She traced patterns on his chest. "Maybe we just keep building, keep figuring out how to be partners in everything, not just survival." "I can do that." He was quiet for a moment. "I want to take you to Italy, meet my mother, see where I grew up. She's been demanding to meet you for months." "She knows about me?" "She knows I got married. She knows it was technically a business arrangement. She doesn't know that I fell in love with you and you fell in love with me, and now we're actually building a real life together." He smiled. "That'll be a fun conversation." "Will she like me?" "She'll love you. You're smart, strong, and you don't let me get away with anything." That's all she's ever wanted for her children, partners who could match them. Children plural. "But your brothers?" "Dead, yeah. But she still thinks of them in present tense. Talks about what they would think, what they would do." His voice went soft. "I think meeting you would make her happy. Knowing I found someone who makes me want to build a future instead of just surviving the present." "Then let's go. After finals, before the summer session starts. 2 weeks in Italy with your terrifying mother sounds perfect." "She's not terrifying, she's just formidable." "That's literally the same thing." He laughed, and the sound filled the room with warmth. They fell asleep there on the couch, tangled together, the city lights filtering through the windows. Over the next weeks, life found a new rhythm. Evelyn finished her semester with grades that surprised even her professors. The foundation work expanded. Catherine officially made her the director of research evaluation, with a salary that made her financially independent for the first time in her life. She started mentoring younger women, helping them navigate the same waters that had nearly drowned her 6 months ago. Alessandro gradually shifted more of his operations toward legitimate business. He couldn't walk away entirely. Too many connections, too many people depending on the old networks, but the balance tipped further toward legal ventures. Real estate development, investment portfolios, consulting firms that actually consulted instead of just laundering money. They bought a house together, a real home instead of just the sterile penthouse. Something with a yard and space to grow, in a neighborhood where neighbors waved and kids played in the street. It felt impossibly normal and impossibly right. The night before they left for Italy, Evelyn found herself in their new kitchen making dinner while Alessandro worked at the table behind her. The domesticity of it struck her, how far they'd come from that garden party where she'd stood in a white dress, feeling like her life was ending. "I need to tell you something," she said, turning to face him. He looked up from his laptop. "That sounds ominous." "It's not, it's just—" She dried her hands on a towel. "I talked to my father yesterday." Alessandro went very still. "Evelyn, I called him, first time since the wedding." She came to sit across from him. "I told him I knew what he did, that he sold me to save himself, that he was a coward who sacrificed his own daughter rather than face the consequences of his choices." "What did he say?" "He tried to justify it, said he did what he had to do, that I was safe and married well, so what was I complaining about?" She smiled without humor. "So I told him he was dead to me, that I never wanted to see or hear from him again, and that if he ever tried to contact me, you'd make sure he regretted it." "Did he believe you?" "I think he heard the truth in my voice, that I wasn't his scared little girl anymore." She reached across the table, took Alessandro's hand, and then I thanked him. "You what?" "I thanked him for being such a terrible father that I had no problem cutting him out of my life completely. Because if he'd been even slightly decent, I might have felt guilty about it. But he made it easy." She squeezed his hand. "And then I told him that his one good decision in life was selling me to you, because I'd never been happier or more myself than I am right now." Alessandro came around the table, pulled her up into his arms. "You're incredible, you know that?" "I learned from the best." She kissed him. "Your mother's going to hate me, isn't she?" "She's going to adore you and probably ask when we're giving her grandchildren. Tell her to give us at least 2 years. I'm not ready to share you yet." "Deal." He spun her around, making her laugh. 2 years to just be us. Building our life, figuring out this partnership, traveling and working and being disgustingly in love. Sounds perfect. They finished making dinner together, talking and laughing and stealing kisses between chopping vegetables and stirring sauce. Later, they'd pack for Italy. Later, Evelyn would meet the formidable mother who'd raised a man capable of both building empires and cooking pasta from scratch. Later, they'd continue building their life together, navigating the complicated waters of love and power and the families they chose instead of the ones they were born into. But right now, in their kitchen, with Alessandro's arms around her and their future stretching out bright and possible, Evelyn Vieri, was exactly where she was supposed to be. She'd been sold like property, married off to settle debts, forced into a life she never chose. And somehow, impossibly, she'd turned it into something beautiful. The flight to Italy was supposed to be the easy part. They'd made it through security, through the lounge, onto the plane, and into their first-class seats before Alessandro's phone started buzzing with the kind of urgency that meant something had gone very wrong. He checked it, and Evelyn watched his expression shift from relaxed to stone-cold focused in half a second. "What is it?" she asked. "Victor, there's a situation with one of the warehouse acquisitions." He was already typing. "Someone's trying to block the sale, claiming irregularities in the ownership documentation. Can it wait until we get back?" "It could, but if I don't handle it now, we lose the property and about 6 months of negotiations." He looked at her, genuinely apologetic. "I need to stay. Deal with this in person. Make sure it doesn't fall apart." Evelyn's chest tightened with disappointment. "So we're not going?" "You should still go. My mother's expecting you, and honestly, she'll be less terrifying if I'm not there to run interference. He squeezed her hand. I'll join you in 3 days, 4 at most. Marco will fly with you, and my cousin Luca will meet you at the airport. Alessandro said, I know. I'm sorry, but this is important, and I trust you to handle my mother without me. He smiled slightly. You've handled Catherine Liang and Vincent DeLuca. Isabella Vieri will be easy by comparison. She wanted to argue, but the plane was boarding and he was already making calls to rearrange everything. 20 minutes later, she was watching him disappear back through the terminal while she sat alone in a seat meant for two. Marco settled into the seat across the aisle. He'll be there soon, Mrs. Vieri. He never breaks promises to you. I know. I just hate that we're starting this trip separately. Look at it this way. You get time with his mother without him translating or softening things. You'll learn more about him in 3 days than you would in 3 weeks with him managing the conversation. That was probably true, which somehow made it worse. The flight was long and uncomfortable despite the luxury seats. Evelyn tried to sleep, couldn't, ended up watching the sun rise over the Atlantic while everyone else dozed. She thought about Alessandro back in the city, handling problems she only half understood, protecting investments and operations that kept their life running smoothly. She thought about the fact that this was their reality now, last-minute changes, business crises, the constant balancing act between the legitimate world and the shadows where he'd built his foundation. She'd chosen this. Chosen him, chosen all of it. But that didn't make it easy. They landed in Rome just after 10 a.m., local time. Evelyn stumbled through customs exhausted and rumpled, grateful when Marco guided her through the chaos of the airport to a waiting car. The man standing beside it was younger than she'd expected, maybe 28, with Alessandro's dark eyes but a warmer smile. He pulled her into a hug before she could even introduce herself. Evelyn, finally. My mother has been talking about nothing but meeting you for months. His English was perfect, barely accented. I'm Luca, Alessandro's cousin, but really more like a younger brother since I moved in with them after my parents died. It's nice to meet you. She let him take her bag, too tired to protest. Alessandro told me about you. He said you run the European operations? That's a fancy way of saying I handle the messy logistics he doesn't want to deal with from overseas. Luca opened the car door for her. How was the flight? And where's my cousin? He said he'd be with you. Business emergency. He's coming in a few days. Of course he is. That man works like sleep is optional. Luca shook his head. My mother's going to kill him for sending you alone. The drive from Rome to the family estate took almost 2 hours, winding through countryside that looked like something from a postcard. Luca kept up a steady stream of conversation, stories about growing up with Alessandro, gossip about family members she'd never met, warnings about his mother that ranged from helpful to terrifying. She's going to ask you 1,000 questions, he said, about your family, your education, your intentions toward Alessandro. Just be honest, she can smell bullshit from a mile away. That's comforting. She's also going to love you. You married her son and made him happy for the first time since his brothers died. That's all she's ever wanted. The estate appeared at the end of a long drive lined with cypress trees. It was smaller than Evelyn had expected, more farmhouse than mansion, with stone walls and terracotta tiles and gardens that looked like they'd been growing wild for centuries. A woman stood on the front steps waiting. She was tiny, barely 5 feet tall, with silver hair pulled back in a bun and eyes that missed nothing. Isabella Vieri, matriarch of a family that had survived generations of poverty and violence and loss. Evelyn. She came forward, took both of Evelyn's hands, studied her face with an intensity that made her want to squirm. My son sends you alone. Is he stupid or just busy? Busy, I think. He wanted to come. He is stupid and busy, but you are here, so we will make the best of it. Isabella turned, still holding one of Evelyn's hands. Come. You must be exhausted. Luca will take your bags. We will have lunch, and you will tell me everything. The house was warm and cluttered with life. Photos on every surface, comfortable furniture that showed years of use, the smell of something cooking that made Evelyn's stomach growl. Isabella led her to a kitchen that was clearly the heart of the home, sat her at a worn wooden table, and started pulling out food. You are too thin.
Isabella said, setting down bread and cheese and olives. Alessandro does not feed you properly? He feeds me fine. I'm just naturally small.
We will fix this while you are here. She poured wine despite it being barely noon. Now, tell me how my son convinced a beautiful, intelligent woman to marry him. And do not give me some romantic story. I know Alessandro. He does not do romance without strategy. Evelyn took a sip of wine, decided honesty was the only option. My father owed money to dangerous people. Alessandro agreed to clear the debt in exchange for marriage. It was a transaction. Isabella's expression didn't change.
And now? Now it's not a transaction anymore. Evelyn met her eyes. Now I love him, and he loves me, and we're building a real life together. Good. That is what I wanted to hear. Isabella sat down across from her. My son has spent his whole life trying to fix what was broken. His father who could not provide, his brothers who died too young, a business that started in blood and darkness. He needed someone who could see past all that to who he actually is. He's a good man, complicated, sometimes ruthless, but good. Ruthless is necessary. The world does not give good things to gentle people. Isabella's smile was sharp. But you know this already. You have learned to be ruthless too, yes? I'm learning. You will need to keep learning. The life you have chosen with Alessandro, it is not safe, it is not simple, and it will ask terrible things of you sometimes. She reached across the table, covered Evelyn's hand with her own. But it is also a life worth living, a life with purpose and partnership and real love. That is rare. Do not waste it. They talked for hours. Isabella told stories about Alessandro as a child, stubborn even then, always trying to solve everyone's problems, crying for days when his father couldn't afford to fix their broken heating. She talked about the accident that killed her other sons, about the year after when Alessandro had transformed from a boy into the man who would build an empire to make sure his family never struggled again. He carries too much guilt, Isabella said quietly. Thinks he should have been in the car with his brothers, that maybe he could have prevented it. I tell him this is foolish, but he does not listen. He mentioned he works too much. He works because stopping means thinking. Thinking means remembering. Remembering means pain. Isabella stood, started clearing dishes. You are good for him because you make him want to stop working, want to build a life instead of just surviving one. That night, Evelyn called Alessandro from the guest room Isabella had prepared. He answered on the first ring. How's my mother? He asked immediately. Terrifying and wonderful. She's been telling me stories about you as a kid. He groaned. Which ones? The one about you trying to fix the neighbor's roof when you were 12 and falling off. I didn't fall. I jumped strategically when I realized the whole thing was coming down. That's not how she tells it. Evelyn curled up on the bed. I miss you. I miss you too. I'm making progress here, though. Should be able to fly out tomorrow night if everything stays on track. Your mother says you work too much. My mother has opinions about everything. A pause. Is she being nice to you? She fed me enough food for 3 people and then told me the life we're building is worth fighting for. So yes, I think she's being nice. Good. That means she likes you. The relief in his voice was obvious. Get some sleep. I'll be there before you know it. But the next morning brought news that changed everything. Evelyn woke to shouting downstairs. Luca's voice raised in rapid Italian, Isabella responding sharply. She threw on clothes and hurried down to find them both on phones, their expressions grim. What happened? She asked. Luca looked at her, switched to English. There's been an incident in the city. Someone tried to burn down one of Alessandro's warehouses. Security stopped it before it spread, but this wasn't random. This was coordinated. Her blood went cold. Is Alessandro okay? He's fine. He's at the site now dealing with it. But Evelyn, Luca hesitated. This might be retaliation. Someone making a move while he's distracted, thinking he's vulnerable. Who? We don't know yet. Could be remnants of DeLuca's organization. Could be a completely different enemy. He showed her his phone, messages from Victor and Alessandro's team. But they're mobilizing everyone. This is serious. Isabella appeared at her elbow. You need to go back. What? You need to be with my son. He will try to handle this alone, will push everyone away because he thinks that protects them. But he needs you there, needs his partner.
not his wife, sitting safely in Italy.
Mrs. Vieri, I think you are stronger than you know. And I think my son needs to remember he does not face these things alone anymore. Isabella's eyes were fierce. Luca will take you to the airport. There is a flight in 3 hours. Go be with your husband.
Evelyn was packed and in the car within 20 minutes. Luca drove like he was trying to break land speed records, and they made the airport with time to spare. He hugged her hard before she went through security. "Take care of him," he said. "And yourself. Alessandro would never forgive me if something happened to you." The flight back was endless. Evelyn couldn't sleep, couldn't focus, just kept checking her phone for updates. Marco met her at the airport looking exhausted.
"Where is he?" she asked.
"The office."
"He's been there for 18 hours. Marco took her bag. "Mrs. Vieri, there's something you should know.
He's going to war over this. Real war, not just negotiations."
"I know."
"Do you? Because once he starts down this path, there's no stopping until it's finished. And finished means people die." She looked at Marco directly. "Then let's make sure it's the right people who die." His expression shifted to something like respect. "Yes, ma'am." The office building was locked down when they arrived. Security at every entrance, everyone on high alert. Evelyn took the private elevator to the top floor, walked past staff who looked at her with a mix of surprise and relief. Alessandro was in his office, standing at the windows, phone pressed to his ear. He was still in the same clothes from when she'd left him at the airport, and he looked like he hadn't slept since. He turned when she walked in, and his entire expression cracked open.
"Evelyn?" The phone clattered to his desk. "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be safe in Italy." "Your mother sent me back, said you needed your partner, not a wife hiding overseas." She crossed to him. "And she was right. This is dangerous. Whoever hit the warehouse, they're not done. They're testing me, seeing if I'll fold." "Then show them you won't." She took his hands. "But you don't do it alone.
We're partners, remember? You handle the strategy, I'll handle whatever you need me to handle. I don't want you anywhere near this." "Too bad. I'm here. I'm not leaving, and you're going to let me help because we're stronger together than apart." She pulled him down to her level, kissed him hard. "Now tell me what happened." He told her everything. The warehouse fire, the investigation that revealed professional arsonists, the messages sent through intermediaries making it clear this was a coordinated attack. 2 other properties had been vandalized, key staff threatened, suppliers pressured to cut ties. "It's Marcus Chen," Alessandro said, "Catherine Liang's husband. He's been wanting to expand into territory I control, and apparently he's decided now is the time to make his move."
"Marcus Chen, who I met at the gala? Who seemed perfectly friendly." "The same. Friendly in public, ruthless in business." Alessandro pulled up files on his computer. "He thinks DeLuca's death left a power vacuum. Thinks I'm vulnerable because I've been transitioning to legitimate operations. He's wrong, but he's committed now." "What are you going to do?" "Remind him why people don't come after me." His voice was cold, calculated.
"I have leverage on him. Businesses that depend on my infrastructure, deals that fall apart if I pull support. I'm going to systematically dismantle everything he's built until he has no choice but to back down. And if he doesn't back down?" Alessandro looked at her, and she saw the dangerous man she'd first met at the garden party, the one who'd built an empire through calculated violence and iron will. "Then I finish this permanently." Over the next week, Evelyn watched her husband wage war with spreadsheets and phone calls and meetings that ended with handshakes that looked friendly but were actually threats. He was methodical, precise, targeting Marcus Chen's operations with surgical efficiency. But Chen wasn't backing down. If anything, he escalated. More vandalism, more pressure on Alessandro's associates, even a thinly veiled suggestion that Evelyn herself might become a target if Alessandro didn't cede territory. That was his mistake. "He just made this personal," Alessandro said after reading the latest message. "Before, this was business. Now, it's about protecting what's mine." "So what do we do?" Evelyn asked. "We go on offense, properly." He pulled out his phone, made a call. "Victor, I need you to pull the files on Marcus Chen's offshore accounts. Everything. I want to know where every dollar came from and where it's going." Evelyn listened as he coordinated his team, watched him transform into the commander who'd survived decades in a world that ate weak men alive. This was the Alessandro most people never saw, focused, ruthless, absolutely certain of victory. "I need you to do something for me," he said after ending his fifth call. "Anything. Call Catherine Liang, tell her we need to meet. Neutral territory, just the three of us." "You want me to call her?" "She respects you. And right now, I need her to understand that I'm not the enemy here. Her husband is." He cupped her face. "Can you do that?" Evelyn made the call. Catherine answered on the second ring, listened to her request, and agreed to meet that afternoon. The meeting happened in a private room at the same museum where they'd attended the gala months ago. Catherine arrived alone, immaculate as always, her expression giving nothing away. "This is about Marcus," she said without preamble. "Yes," Alessandro replied. "He's been hitting my operations for a week. Arson, vandalism, threatening my people. I need it to stop." "And you think I can control him?" Catherine's smile was thin. "My husband does what he wants, Alessandro. I learned that years ago. I think you're smarter than to let him start a war that destroys both our organizations." Alessandro leaned forward. "I have evidence of his offshore accounts, shell companies he's using to hide income from federal oversight, enough to put him away for 20 years if it reaches the right people." Catherine's expression didn't change, but Evelyn saw her fingers tighten on her clutch. "You're threatening to expose my husband. I'm offering you a choice. He backs off, we go back to peaceful coexistence, and those files stay buried, or he keeps pushing, and I release everything to both the IRS and the press. Your foundation, your reputation, everything you've built, it all gets dragged down with him." "That's quite a threat." "That's a promise." Alessandro's voice was steel. "I don't want war with you, Catherine, but I will not let your husband destroy what I've built because he's too greedy to recognize boundaries." Catherine looked at Evelyn. "What do you think of all this?" Evelyn chose her words carefully. "I think Marcus made a mistake when he threatened me, because Alessandro would burn the entire city down to keep me safe, and he'd sleep fine afterward. Your husband underestimated how far he'd go." "I see." Catherine stood, smoothed her dress. "I'll speak to Marcus. The attacks will stop. And if they don't, then you do what you need to do, and I'll do what I need to do to protect my own interests." She looked at them both. "But understand this. If you release those files, our working relationship ends. Permanently. Choose carefully." She left without another word. "Do you think she'll control him?" Evelyn asked. "I think she values her empire more than her marriage. And I think Marcus Chen is about to have a very unpleasant conversation with his wife." Alessandro pulled her close. "Either way, this ends soon." It ended 3 days later. Marcus Chen called Alessandro directly, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. "You win. I'm pulling back." "Smart decision. Don't mistake this for weakness. I'm backing off because my wife made a compelling argument about preserving what we've built. But if you ever threaten me again..." "You'll what? Come after me harder?" Alessandro's voice was cold. "You already tried that. You lost. Learn from it." The line went dead. Evelyn watched her husband set down the phone, saw the tension finally drain from his shoulders. "Is it over?" she asked. "It's over." He pulled her into his arms, buried his face in her hair. "We won." They celebrated that night with the team, Victor, Marco, all the people who'd worked around the clock to protect what they'd built. Evelyn found herself toasting with men who'd done things she probably didn't want to know about, who looked at her with respect because she'd stood beside Alessandro instead of running when things got dangerous. "You're one of us now, Mrs. Vieri," Victor said, raising his glass. "Welcome to the family." Later, alone in their bedroom, Alessandro made love to her with an intensity that spoke to just how frightened he'd been of losing her, of losing everything they'd built together. "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered against his skin. "You're stuck with me." "Good. Because I'd hunt you down if you tried to leave." "Romantic." "I'm not a romantic man, Evelyn, but I'm a committed one." He kissed her softly. "And I'm committed to us, to this life, to building something that lasts." The following week, they flew back to Italy together. Isabella met them at the door with a smile that said she knew exactly what had happened and approved completely.
You fought together, she said, pulling Evelyn into a hug. Good. A marriage that does not weather storms is not worth having.
They spent 2 weeks in Italy, and Evelyn fell in love with the country, with the family that welcomed her like she'd always belonged, with the version of Alessandro that emerged when he was home, lighter, younger, more at peace. On their last night, they sat in the garden watching the sun set over the hills. Alessandro's arm was around her shoulders, her head resting on his chest.
I've been thinking, he said quietly. Dangerous. I want to pull back more from the risky operations.
Accelerate the transition to fully legitimate business. He looked down at her. I want us to have a normal life, or as normal as we can manage. I want kids someday, and I don't want them growing up in the shadow of the things I've done.
I want that too. But Alessandro, you can't erase your past. I know, but I can build a different future. He kissed her forehead. With you.
They flew home to the city 3 days later, to the house they'd bought together, to the life they were building piece by piece. Evelyn went back to her classes, her foundation work, her growing network of connections and influence. Alessandro continued restructuring his empire, cutting ties with old partnerships, investing in ventures that would survive scrutiny. It wasn't always easy. There were arguments about security protocols and work-life balance, and his tendency to try to solve her problems instead of just listening. There were nights when she woke to find him staring at the ceiling, wrestling with decisions that kept him awake. There were moments when the weight of their past threatened to crush their future, but they faced it together. 6 months after the Marcus Chen incident, Evelyn graduated with her chemistry degree. Alessandro sat in the audience with Catherine and Isabella, cheering louder than anyone when she crossed the stage. That night, at dinner with friends and family, he stood and made a toast. To my wife, he said, his voice steady and sure, who was sold to me like property and turned it into the greatest gift I never knew I needed, who made me want to be better, do better, build something worth protecting, who stood beside me through fire and came out stronger. He raised his glass. I love you, Evelyn Vieri, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me. She cried, which she hated, but couldn't help, because this man, complicated, dangerous, impossibly devoted, had given her a life she'd never imagined wanting and couldn't imagine living without. A year later, they stood in front of a small gathering of close friends and family and renewed their vows. Not the hollow words from their forced wedding, but real promises made with clear eyes and full hearts. I choose you, Evelyn said, holding his hands. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Because you've shown me what real partnership looks like. Because you've protected me, challenged me, and loved me even when I made it difficult. I choose you, Alessandro, every single day. I choose you, he replied, his voice rough with emotion. Not because you were offered, but because you're irreplaceable. You've changed everything, my priorities, my goals, my entire understanding of what it means to build a life with someone. I choose you, Evelyn, for as long as you'll have me. They kissed, and it felt like a beginning instead of an ending. 2 years after that, their daughter was born, Isabella Maria Vieri, named for her fierce grandmother. She had Alessandro's dark eyes and Evelyn's stubborn determination, and she was perfect in all the imperfect ways that mattered. Evelyn stood in the hospital holding her daughter, watching Alessandro cradle the tiny life they'd created together, and thought about the impossible journey that had brought them here. From that garden party where she'd stood in a white dress feeling like her life was ending, to this moment where it felt like everything was finally beginning. What are you thinking? Alessandro asked, that familiar question that had become their ritual. That my father tried to destroy my life and accidentally gave me the best one I could have imagined. That's a generous interpretation. Maybe, but it's true. She looked down at their daughter, sleeping peacefully. He thought he was selling me into misery. Instead, he gave me you, gave me this, gave me a future I actually want. Do you ever regret it, the way it started? Every day. And not at all. She met his eyes. I regret that I didn't have a choice. I regret the fear and anger and feeling like property, but I don't regret where it led. I don't regret us. He kissed her softly, mindful of the baby between them. I love you, both of you, more than I have words for.
I know, and we love you too. They brought their daughter home to the house they'd filled with life and laughter, to the future they were building together one day at a time. It wasn't a fairy tale. There were still security concerns and business complications, and the occasional threat from someone who thought they could exploit weakness. But they faced it all together, partners in every sense of the word. Years later, when Isabella was old enough to ask how her parents met, Evelyn told her the truth. Not the sanitized version, but the real story of a girl who was sold to settle debts and a man who offered her a choice instead of a cage. "That's horrible," Isabella said, her young face outraged. "It was," Evelyn agreed. "But it taught me something important, that you're not defined by how your story starts. You're defined by what you do with the chapters that follow." "What did you do?" "I chose to be strong, to build something real, to turn a transaction into a partnership and a partnership into love." She pulled her daughter close. "And I chose your father every single day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard." "Do you still choose him?" "Every day," Evelyn said, watching Alessandro play with their son in the yard. Yes, they'd had a second child, a boy who looked like trouble and acted like it too. "And he chooses me. That's what love is, sweetheart. Not the magic of how it starts, but the work of making it last." On their 10th anniversary, Alessandro took her back to Italy, to the estate where they'd started to become real. They walked through the gardens hand in hand, talking about everything and nothing, comfortable in the silence that came from knowing each other completely. "Do you remember what my mother said to you that first visit?" Alessandro asked. "She said a lot of things." "Which part?" "That the life we were building would ask terrible things of us sometimes, but it would be worth living." She was right. Evelyn leaned against him. "It's asked terrible things, made us make impossible choices, forced us to become harder than we wanted to be. But it's been worth every impossible choice, every hard moment, every time we had to fight for what we built." She looked up at him. "I'd do it all again, every single piece of it. Even the part where your father sold you to a stranger? Especially that part, because that stranger became my partner, my protector, my best friend. He became the person I want to face everything with, the good, the bad, the complicated, the beautiful, all of it." Alessandro pulled her close, and they stood together watching the sun set over the Italian countryside. Two people who'd started as a transaction and built something that would last generations. Because that's what real love was. Not the fairy tale beginning, but the deliberate choice to keep building even when it was hard. The commitment to face storms together instead of running to separate shelters. The courage to look at someone and say, "I choose you, every day, no matter what." Evelyn Cross had been sold like furniture to pay her father's debts. She'd walked down an aisle toward a man she didn't know, wearing a dress she hated, feeling like her life was ending. Instead, it had been the beginning of everything. She'd learned to claim power instead of just surviving it. She'd turned a forced marriage into a real partnership. She'd taken a transaction and transformed it into a love story worth telling. Not because it started perfectly, but because they'd fought to make it perfect for them. And in the end, that was the only kind of happy ending worth having. Not the one handed to you, but the one you built with your own hands, brick by careful brick, choice by deliberate choice, until you looked around and realized you'd created something beautiful from the rubble of what could have destroyed you. Evelyn Vieri stood in the Italian sunset, her husband's arms around her, and smiled. Because she'd been given the worst beginning imaginable, and she'd turned it into the best life she could have dreamed. And that, she thought, was the real victory. Not surviving what was done to her, but thriving because of what she'd chosen to do with it. The girl who'd been sold was gone. In her place stood a woman who'd learned that power wasn't given, it was taken. That love wasn't magic, it was work. That partnership wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up for each other, especially when things got hard. She'd been sold into marriage, but she'd chosen everything that came after. And that choice had made all the difference.